You ever notice how avoidance can disappear on you like they join the witness protection program, then come back texting, hey, like they just went to grab water? No apology, no explanation, just emotional amnesia. And now you're sitting there wondering, did I imagine the distance? Or are we just pretending I don't have feelings? Yeah, let's talk about that. Chapter 1. Okay, listen. This one messes with people's heads bad. You know when someone kinda disappears on you? Replies get slower. Energy changes. Conversations feel thinner. And you sit there thinking, did something happen? But you don't say anything yet. You don't want to look dramatic. So you wait. Then boom, a few days later or a week, they pop back up. Same tone, same jokes. Same casual energy. Like nothing happened. No, sorry I went quiet. No, I needed some space. No explanation. Just vibes. And you're left sitting there like, did I imagine the distance? Was I overthinking? Do they even realize they pulled away? Yeah, this is classic avoidant behavior. And no, you're not crazy. Here's what I think is really happening. Avoidants don't experience distance the way you do. For you, emotional connection is like Wi-Fi. When the signal drops, you feel it immediately. You notice the lag. You try to fix it. For them, connection is more like Bluetooth. It turns on when needed and switches off when it feels like too much. So when they pull away, it doesn't feel like a dramatic shift in their world. It feels like regulation, not rejection, not punishment, not a message, just relief. You're over there feeling the emotional silence like it's loud. They're over there feeling calm because the emotional intensity lowered. Can you imagine that difference? You're thinking, they're drifting away from me? They're thinking, okay, things feel less overwhelming now. That's why they come back acting normal. To them, nothing big happened. There was no emotional event worth addressing. No issue to process. They didn't experience the distance as a problem, so they don't see a reason to talk about it. Meanwhile, you felt the shift like a mini breakup. And here's where it really starts messing with your head. Because when they come back all chill and friendly, your brain goes, oh, maybe it wasn't that serious. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this is just how they are. So you swallow your feelings, again, but your body remembers. You start feeling more anxious next time they take longer to reply. You start watching their tone more closely. You start overanalyzing small changes, not because you're needy, but because your nervous system just learned connection with this person is unstable, and instability makes humans hyper-aware. That's biology, not drama. Now, let's talk about the big question. Do avoidants realize they hurt you? Short answer, not in the moment. Long answer, they might realize it later. But by then, they've already emotionally moved on from the incident. Avoidants are very present-focused with emotions. When they feel overwhelmed, their system goes into shutdown or distancing mode. The goal is to reduce internal pressure. Once they feel better again, their brain goes, okay, cool, we're good now. They don't automatically revisit what happened while they were gone. They don't sit there reflecting like, my silence probably made them feel abandoned. That kind of emotional cause and effect thinking requires them to stay connected to the discomfort. And that's exactly what their system avoids. So when they return, they're genuinely confused if you're still hurt. You're here like, you disappeared on me emotionally. They're like, I just needed a little time. Why is this a big deal? Two completely different emotional timelines. And this is the part nobody tells you. When you don't bring it up, it silently trains the pattern. They disappear gives comeback gives. Everything resumes gives no consequences gives. Nervous system learns. Cool, this works. Not because they're evil. Not because they're manipulating you. But because behavior that reduces their stress and doesn't create conflict gets repeated. Simple conditioning. And you're slowly building resentment you don't even show. You start feeling less safe, less open, less sure. But on the surface, everything looks normal. That's why this dynamic is so confusing. There's no big fight, no dramatic ending, just quiet emotional erosion. And the worst part? You start doubting your own perception. You think, maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I expect too much. Maybe this is just modern dating. No, it's an attachment mismatch playing out in slow motion. And unless someone names it, you keep blaming yourself for reacting to emotional inconsistency that would make any nervous system uneasy. So, yeah, when they come back acting normal, it's not a mind game. It's not always calculated. It's just that for them, the disconnection didn't register as damage. For you, it did. And that difference? That's the whole story. Chapter 2. Alright, so now the real question. Why did they disappear in the first place? Because let's be honest, people don't randomly go distant when everything feels neutral. Avoidants usually pull back right after something got closer, warmer, or more emotionally real. That's the part most people miss. You're sitting there thinking the distance came out of nowhere. But if you rewind the timeline a little, there's almost always a moment before the shift. Maybe you had a deep talk. Maybe you shared something vulnerable. Maybe you two spent a really good day together. Maybe you expressed how much you like them. And to you that moment meant, we're growing. To them that moment felt like, this is getting intense. See the difference? Closeness feels safe and bonding to you. Closeness feels like pressure to an avoidant nervous system. Not because they don't like you. That's the twist. They often pull away after feeling something good. You won't believe this, but emotional warmth can trigger their stress response. Your brain says, this is connection. Their nervous system says, this is dependency forming danger. So what do? They don't sit down and think logically. Yes, I shall now create emotional distance. Nope, it's automatic. They just start feeling a subtle urge to pull back. Less texting, slower replies, less emotional tone, more distraction, more busy. And if you ask what's wrong, you'll probably get, nothing. I'm just tired. I've been busy. And here's the thing. They're not always lying. They just don't have clear awareness of what's happening internally. They only know they feel off, overwhelmed, or drained, and their system tells them space will fix it. So they take space. But they don't announce it like a secure person would. A secure person might say, hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I just need a day to recharge, but we're good. Avoidants skip that step. Why? Because explaining emotional needs feels like more emotional intensity. And intensity is what they're trying to escape. So instead of communicating distance, they just create it, silently. Now here's where it gets really unfair for you. You experience their withdrawal as disconnection. They experience it as self-regulation. You feel pushed away. They feel relief. You start thinking about the relationship more. They start thinking about it less. Not because they don't care, but because distance turns down their emotional noise. And once their system calms down, they come back. Not with a big emotional reunion, not with processing, just casual re-entry. Because in their internal world, the threat, too much closeness, passed. So now they can engage again like normal. Meanwhile, you've been overthinking for 3 days straight. You see how this becomes a loop? Closeness gives they feel overwhelmed, gives they disappear. Distance gives they feel better, gives they return. Return gives you feel relieved, gives closeness builds again, and round it goes. Can you imagine how confusing that is for someone on the receiving end? You start associating intimacy with loss. Every time things get good, part of you braces for the drop. That's how anxious attachment gets activated even in people who were secure before. It's not that you're too needy, it's that your system is reacting to unpredictable emotional availability. Now let's clear up a myth real quick. People love to say, if they liked you enough, they wouldn't pull away. Sounds logical. Totally wrong in attachment dynamics. Avoidants often pull away because they like you. Feelings increase vulnerability. Vulnerability increases perceived risk. Risk triggers distancing. It's backwards, but it's real. The stronger the bond starts to feel, the louder their internal alarm can get. Not an alarm that says, "This person is bad." An alarm that says, "I'm losing independence. I'm getting emotionally exposed. This could hurt later." So they create space to feel safe again, but they don't explain any of this. So from your side, it just looks like emotional inconsistency. Hot, cold, close, gone back, repeat. And every time they return acting normal, you're expected to just roll with it. No discussion. No repair. That's the part that slowly wears you down. Because connection without repair doesn't build safety. It builds anxiety. And the more times this happens, the more you start shrinking yourself. You stop sharing as much. You stop asking for reassurance. You try to be low maintenance, not because that's who you are, but because you learn that having needs risks triggering their disappearance. That's how people lose themselves in avoidant dynamics without even realizing it. And the avoidant? They often think everything is fine because there's no yelling, no dramatic fights, no ultimatums, just a partner who's slowly becoming quieter about their needs, which feels peaceful. But it's not peace, it's suppression. And suppression always comes back later as resentment, emotional exhaustion, or sudden detachment. So when they come back acting normal after ignoring you, understand this. They're not resetting the relationship. They're resetting their nervous system. But your nervous system never got a reset. You just stayed in uncertainty the whole time. That mismatch is the core issue. Chapter 3. All right, this is the part people usually mess up. Not because they're dumb, because they're hurt and reacting. So the avoidant disappears. Then they come back all casual like, "Hey, what's up?" Sending memes. Acting normal. Zero mention of the emotional vanishing act. And your brain is screaming, "Excuse me?" But what do most people do? They pick one of three reactions. And honestly, all three backfire. Let's break them down. Reaction number 1, acting like nothing happened. This is the most common one. You're upset. You felt the distance. You were anxious. Maybe you even cried. But when they come back acting normal, you match their energy. You joke back. You keep it light. You pretend you're fine. Why? Because you don't want to ruin the vibe. You don't want to seem needy. You don't want them to disappear again. So you silence yourself. Short-term result? Things feel smooth again. Long-term result? You start building emotional debt. Every time you swallow your feelings, your system logs it. They left. I was hurt. I said nothing. That doesn't disappear. It turns into resentment and anxiety later. And here's the brutal truth. When you pretend nothing happened, you're teaching them nothing happened. They don't improve a pattern they don't see as a problem. Reaction number 2, emotional explosion. This one happens when you've swallowed your feelings one too many times. They come back casual and you go, "So we're just not gonna talk about how you ignored me for 3 days?" You always do this. You clearly don't care. Totally understandable reaction. Your pain finally hits the surface. But here's what happens inside an avoidant when this comes at them suddenly. Their system goes into threat mode. Not, "Oh no, I hurt them." More like, "This is intense. I'm being blamed. I need to escape." So instead of leaning in to repair, they shut down, deflect, or disappear again. Not because your feelings are wrong, but because the delivery hits their nervous system like an attack, not an invitation to connect. You're trying to create closeness through honesty. They experience it as emotional danger. And the cycle repeats. Reaction number 3, passive-aggressive distance. This one feels powerful at first. They disappear. Fine. When they come back, you go cold. Short replies. Dry tone. Delayed responses. You're thinking, "Oh, so now we're matching energy." It feels like control, like you're protecting yourself. But here's the hidden outcome. Avoidants don't interpret this as they're hurt. They interpret it as, "Okay, less emotional demand." That's easier. So instead of realizing they cause pain, they feel relief again. And now both of you are emotionally withdrawing. Congrats, you just created a slow-motion mutual fade-out. So what actually works? Not pretending. Not attacking. Not playing cold. You need something most people skip. Calm, direct, low-intensity honesty. Yeah, I know. Not as dramatic. Not as satisfying in the moment, but way more effective. It sounds like this. Hey, I'm glad you're back. I just want to be honest, when you go quiet like that, I start feeling disconnected. I don't need constant texting, but a little heads up helps me feel secure. See what that does? You're not accusing. You're not shaming. You're not pretending. You're naming the impact without turning it into a character attack. Avoidants handle feedback better when it feels like information, not emotional fire. Will they suddenly transform into a secure communicator overnight? No. Let's be real. But this does two important things. It gives them awareness they didn't naturally have. It shows you're not going to silently absorb emotional inconsistency anymore. And their response tells you everything. If they care and have capacity to grow, they'll try, maybe awkwardly, maybe imperfectly, but you'll see effort. If they dismiss you, mock it, or keep repeating the same pattern with zero adjustment, that's not attachment style anymore. That's emotional unavailability you can't fix. And here's the part people don't like hearing. You can explain your needs perfectly and still not get them met. Because communication doesn't create capacity. It only reveals it. Sometimes the lesson isn't, how do I make them understand? It's, do they have the emotional ability to show up differently? Hard question. Necessary one. Because staying in a loop where you keep adapting while they stay the same, that slowly wrecks your self-worth. You start believing your needs are too much when really they're just incompatible with someone who avoids emotional responsibility. So yeah, when they come back acting normal, you don't have to blow up. You don't have to play cool. You don't have to punish. You just stop pretending it didn't affect you. Calm truth. Clear boundary. Low drama. Their reaction after that? That's your answer. Chapter 4. Now let's talk about the part nobody likes admitting. This dynamic is addictive. Yeah, even when it hurts. Even when it's confusing. Even when you swear you're done. Because what you're experiencing isn't just emotional inconsistency. It's intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological pattern that makes gambling addictive. No joke. You don't get connection consistently. You get it randomly. Sometimes they're warm. Sometimes they vanish. Sometimes they're sweet again. Your brain starts chasing the good version of them. And every time they come back acting normal, it feels like relief. Like you got them back. Like things are okay again. That relief hits your nervous system like a reward. Not because the relationship is stable, but because the stress temporarily stopped. So your brain links them with both anxiety and relief. That creates a trauma bond style loop. Distance gives anxiety. Return gives relief. Relief feels like love. Cycle repeats. And here's the scary part. The lower the emotional lows, the more intense the highs feel. When they come back warm after ignoring you, it doesn't feel normal. It feels special, reassuring, magnetic. But it's not intimacy. It's contrast. Healthy love feels steady, predictable, safe. This feels intense, emotional, addictive. Big difference. And because the good moments feel so good, you start tolerating the bad ones longer than you normally would. You think, they're not always like this. We have such a strong connection. When it's good, it's really good. Yeah, that's literally how intermittent reinforcement works. Now mix that with something else. Hope. You've seen their good side. Their soft side. Their caring side. So you believe that version is the real them, and the distant version is just stress, trauma, or bad timing. So you try harder to reach the good version again. You become more patient, more understanding, less demanding. You start thinking love means endurance. But here's the truth most people avoid. Love isn't proven by how much pain you can tolerate. It's proven by how safe both people feel being emotionally consistent. And consistency is exactly what this dynamic doesn't give. That's why walking away feels so hard. You're not just leaving a person. You're breaking a chemical cycle in your nervous system. Your brain screams, but what if they come back different this time? Because sometimes they do come back softer, kinder, more present. Just long enough to restart the loop? That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But awareness matters. Because once you see the pattern, you stop romanticizing the return. You start asking better questions. Not, how do I get them to stay consistent? Do I feel emotionally safe in this connection? Not, how do I avoid triggering them? But, why am I shrinking myself to maintain this? Not, do they care about me? But, are they capable of showing up in a way that meets my needs? That shift changes everything. Because the goal stops being win their closeness. The goal becomes protect my emotional stability. And here's the final piece. When you stop chasing, stop over-accommodating, and start calmly holding standards, one of two things happens. Either they step up slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely trying, or they fade out because the relationship now requires emotional effort they can't give. Both outcomes give you clarity, and clarity is way more peaceful than confusion. So, yeah. When an avoidant comes back acting normal after ignoring you, it messes with your head. Not because you're dramatic, not because you're needy, but because inconsistency activates your attachment system, and your system is just trying to feel safe. You're not crazy for feeling the distance. You're just wired for connection with someone wired for self-protection. And unless both people are willing to work on that, you'll keep having normal conversations on the surface, while slowly feeling more alone underneath. And that's the part that really hurts. Not the silence, but the pretending it didn't matter.